a build-up for Origin 1 for our guys was the biggest game that for a lot of the younger blokes that we'd ever had an opportunity. Myself, Chris Close, and Mel, we were only 18, 19-year-old kids. So for us, it was a dream come true to be playing alongside some of the biggest name players in the sport. For a lot of the other guys, like Beatson, it was probably just something that he was coming back. He believed that he had plenty of pressure on him. I though, had a situation that I had a lifeline thrown to me. I had a chance to prove myself finally playing in a representative game against some of the biggest names in rugby league. Some of the guys that were playing in that game probably felt the same way.
Now there's a sight to see. Big Harvey in the maroon of Queensland and captain.
Look, Beatson inspired everybody in the Queensland jersey that night. We watched the way that he walked around in the dressing room prior to the match. We all sat nervously in the dressing room. You could just hear the studs just tapping away on the concrete before the game. We looked at Beatson just walking around. He had that famous flat cap on. He was walking around just taking his time, talking individually to players. Finally he came around, sat down next to me, and I'll still remember the words that he said to me. He said, "Look, I'm not going to tell you lies. I haven't seen a lot of your football, but unless you could play, you wouldn't be in this team." And he put the cap on top of my head, and it was almost like a rubbish tin lid. It was that big. It went right around, and he just slapped me on the legs, and he said, "Son, you can play footy. I've seen you score a couple of tries on tape." And he said, "Just go out and do your best. You won't let us down. I know that." And I felt 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Just having the confidence from Beatson. I went out there and I followed him around like a mongrel dog all night long. I don't think I played any of my individual game that night. I just followed Arthur Beatson around. I dreamed about running off one of Arthur Beatson's passes in the lead up to that game. And that's all I did. And I think Queensland's first try, I took the pass from Arthur Beatson. He took it up, turned it around, threw the ball back to me. I passed it out to the Queensland back line and went all the way out. And of course, Kerry Bostad scored it. And I believe it's the second loudest noise at Lang Park. It was only beaten by the sound that, of course, when Arthur Beatson was introduced to the crowd individually, that noise, that night. A very famous noise, and it made us all feel very proud.
Beatson, beautiful pass back to Lang. Unloads to Meninga. Nicely to Close. Close accelerates and does beautifully right through the gap. He's beaten Evie pointless. It's under the post for him.
Look, it finally injected some confidence in Queensland Rugby League. For so many years, we thought that we were a chance of beating New South Wales every year. That first game of every series, we used to think via the media that we were a chance of beating them. We used to be told that we were taking a game into that series that were some sort of hope. But you used to see Queensland with 10 or 15 minutes to go, leading the Blues. But at full time, we're always probably 20, 25 points behind, and you'd watch the crowd file out of the gates. And I mean, it used to be like a funeral. They'd go out of there and they'd be walking along. It'd be so quiet. They'd be just talking, at such a low level, saying, are we ever going to be any chance of beating this mob? The great disappointment was, so often, it would be a couple of Queenslanders that would destroy the Maroons. Beatson would come up with a couple of famous passes in the 70s, in the early 70s. I can remember watching him do that. And in the later years, I can remember watching one game where New South Wales beat Queensland 10-5. And the two tries that were scored by New South Wales were by John Rebo, and both of the tries were scored by his brilliant pace over about 60 or 70 metres. And that was at that stage, the crowd had had enough. They thought, that's it, we've just got to be able to get our players back at full time. We've got to have a full-time State of Origin series where we're able to have our Queensland players on board, and thankfully those times did come around.
Mortimer, yes!
Yeah, we started shooting our mouths off when it was 1982. We thought we're going to get all of our players back full time. We're going to have the Queensland players on our team. You know, for 3 games, we've won the 80 series, the 81 series. What's it going to be like to have these players back for every game? And then, of course, 1982 started, and we were beaten in the first game. We thought we were in a bit of strife here. You know, we've shot our mouths off a little bit too early. We're in a little bit of pressure, under a bit of pressure, and in some danger. But thankfully, we knew that we had to provide a little bit of spirit on the field, and we had to show exactly what sort of character we had as a football team. It did happen on the football field, and I think it was the younger players finally that showed that they had some ability on the field. It just wasn't the older players that originally showed that they were the ones that had the ability, like the Beatsons, the Rod Reddys, the Rod Morrises, all those sorts of guys. It was the younger players, you know, the guys that were coming in, you know, the new hopes like the Mark Murrays, Gene Miles, all those sorts of guys, the hope of the future, that were going to be the backbone of Queensland Rugby League that provided the success. Look, you could understand why New South Wales didn't take it all that seriously to start with. I mean, they had some of their best friends playing against them. For a Queensland team that were for so long the laughing stock of the Australian Rugby League in representative games. You know, Arthur was playing against a lot of his Parramatta teammates, and all of a sudden he was turning around and giving him a smack in the chops. It was seen as an insult to Mick Cronin, and I can probably understand Mick being very disappointed to cop one, because he didn't exactly just give him a clip over the lid. He gave anybody a real drilling when he punched them. And you know, I think the New South Wales players probably thought that, oh well, they'll beat us once. When it happened again in 1981, they thought, well, they've beaten us, but you know, we've beaten them in the other 2 games. When they got a chance to see a full series, they expected that it, you know, we'll beat them in the series. Then there was that real sort of that jealousy that Queensland had had for so long, that if we had a chance, we'd be able to provide success for our fans. And I think all of a sudden there was that hatred between the media as well as the players and the fans. You could see it off the field as well. You used to read the papers and see the stories were so different over the border. And I used to talk to some of the other players, and you know, when we used to get in the Australian teams, we used to be a lot friendlier than what the papers used to declare what we were when we got in an Australian team. And I think one of the most important things was that once we got in the representative teams, we used to have to settle down a little bit and talk to each other and say, listen, you know, the representative games are over, we are good friends again. But I've got to say, when we did play those state of origin games, we weren't good friends. You know, we had that interstate rivalry, and it became famous from 82 onward. And by 83, I think New South Wales had finally accepted that it was a true series. They really gave us you know, a tough time, although we did manage to achieve success in 83 and 84. But by 1985, it was all about, you know, taking the pride away from Queensland and slapping us in the face.
Just moments away from an historic State of Origin series win. Here's Kenny. Kenny's on the line.
I was talking earlier about a couple of the younger players, you know, finally starting to prove something on the football field for Queensland. The Mark Murrays, the Gene Miles, all these sorts of guys. They'd watched the Arthur Beatsons, and you know, by the time they got into the Queensland colours, they were able to provide something on the footy field that was fantastic. And I think that by 1985, the New South Wales players, that's exactly what they were doing in reverse. A lot of their younger players had finally come through, and they thought, well, we've had a gut full of watching Queensland achieve success on the football field. We're not going to sit back and accept this. It's about turning things around for us. And they achieved it through fantastic performances on the field, and it was their younger players that were standing up to be counted. And some of the things that they didn't make us feel good in the Queensland side of things, but when you look back and have a look at the games in replay, it really was their younger players that were doing the things in the correct manner. The younger guys that were doing all the hard work, the more experienced players were steering them around the paddock, but it was the young guys that were fantastic performers.
Now, New South Wales in possession, but gee, they're only about 15 metres out. And there's a countdown on, 17 seconds. It's with Sterling, a long ball out there for O'Connor. Switching back inside, keeping it alive now with Kenny. Kenny knocked down by Queensland. Tackle count should restart, but time will beat him, I think. Time will beat him. Queensland fans have gone crazy. Referee Gomersall says that's it. That's the ball game. The Winfield State of Origin series has gone back to Queensland. Queensland have defeated New South Wales by 10 points to 8.
Yeah, we had Queensland had Wayne Bennett for a coach after we got beaten 3-0, and that was probably the worst period for Queensland Rugby League. The proudest for New South Wales, because that was the first clean sweep in a series. Wayne Bennett took over, and it was almost a situation where we were going to lose 3 series in a row. It was pretty tough for us. Bennett took over, and he probably got rid of the old style where we used to get into camp, get on the drink for a few days, and finally start to get serious. Probably 2.5 days before the game, he really added some professionalism to the Queensland camp. Had us for a couple of years. Decided to get out because of his want to be associated with the Brisbane Broncos, and of course that came after the Canberra Raiders. But when we went back to Arthur Beetson, there was a little bit of, I suppose, a relaxation of our mood. We started to have a little bit of fun again, and I think Arthur was very calm with the players. He knew that there were still a few of the old boys there, and we still wanted to have a little bit of fun in camp. And he used to get in and say, "Listen, we're not going to be the old timers. We're going to have a bit of fun." But we always knew that Arthur was never going to be able to treat us differently and forget all about the manner in which we had quite some time ago. We had great respect for him, and I think that that was always the same in reverse. I think that if we provided for him on the football field, he was always quite able to just let the training slip just a fraction off the football field. There was always an extra game of touch for him. We used to allow him to score 1 or 2 tries on the touch field, and probably make sure that we got back in time for the roast pork at lunchtime. And he was just such a wonderful addition to the team, Beatso. And I think the Queensland Rugby League, in making him a life member at that early stage, probably realised how fantastic he was to a lot of the older Queensland talent that were still around, and the next new wave of younger Queensland Rugby League talent that were coming through, the Kevy Walters, the Alan Langers, all those sorts of guys that were about to really be the big bonus for Queensland Rugby League.
Goodbye to Southern New South Wales, and it's a Queensland rain, and Langer with a chance, Langer over, oh, Sterling missed him, and Langer was over.
Look, I played against Alf in the State League in Queensland. We had a fairly strong team, Winner Manly in Brisbane. We played against them the weekend prior to the selection of the Queensland team, and I must say we did defeat them quite heavily. And I spoke to Wayne Bennett. There was a meeting with the Queensland selectors, and they said, well, we've got to bring some names up for the Queensland halfback position. Both Wayne and I said, well, these are a couple of names that are going to be available. And Alf at that stage was, you know, only in his first season of first grade there. Probably wasn't enjoying his best season of defence, or his best couple of months of defence. But you know, a lot of the selectors just simply said, look, he's a fantastic attacking player, which certainly wasn't a secret at that stage, and they said he's the bloke that's coming into the team. It was hands down, he was the guy that was going to be selected, and we had a meeting once the Queensland side had been selected. And I must say, I mean, I probably had some concerns simply because of his size. Everybody knew that he was a brilliant attacking player, and we had our first meeting when the Queensland side was picked, and I think you know, there was some worry about his ability to be able to stand up to the massive New South Wales forwards, and Fatty Vaughton just butted in at our first defensive meeting when we were talking about where he was going to be standing in the defensive line, and said, listen, he's wearing a bloody Queensland jersey. We don't have to worry about where we're going to hide him in the line or where he's going to stand up, or, you know, who's going to assist him. He's simply one of our players. He won't let us down. No Queensland players ever let his teammates down, and this bloke's not going to let anybody down. And he turned around and looked at Alf and he said, and you're not going to be the first bloke ever to let another Queenslander down, are you? And Alf looked up at Fatty and said, no, I'm not, mate. And the rest, you know, as they say, is history. Alf never ever did let the Queensland jersey down. He simply went on to brilliant performances in his first game, and just simply got better from there. Yeah, the trip to the US was interesting for us. It was almost like a holiday for a lot of the Queensland guys. We'd virtually been put on the plane knowing that we had to put on a showcase game for rugby league. It was very important for us to do that, but it was a little bit unusual for us to get on the plane, and we had Wayne Bennett as a coach, who wasn't a guy that enjoyed watching guys drink. He was a guy that had never had a glass of alcohol in his life, yet we got on the plane, got on the drink straight away. The New South Wales team were up the front of the plane, or towards the front of the plane. They weren't allowed to drink all the way over, so it was quite obvious that they were very serious. They'd had a diet set for them on the plane. Our guys basically had relaxed a little bit. We got over there, and we were just concerned about putting on a game of rugby league to try and promote the game throughout the United States. When the game took place, it was very, very obvious that they were quite determined to beat Queensland. The game was telecast back to Australia. It was held up for around about an hour and a half. It was very hot in the States, and it wasn't a very comfortable game. Certainly a comfortable start for Queensland. I can remember Royce Simmons came in and grabbed hold of me and he said, mate, we've been told to bung on a blue. He said, just grab hold of me, make it look like we're belting the living daylights out of each other. And from then the game just continued on. We tended to get serious, but it was good to be able to try and promote the game throughout the US, but New South Wales was simply too good for us on the night. We tended to switch on a little bit too late, and that was after the blue. But they were very good that night. We got a chance after that, though, to be able to spend some time in the US. The Queensland Rugby League, through their generosity, gave us 3 days in Las Vegas. After we'd won the State of Origin series. New South Wales, unfortunately, had to go home around about 5 or 6 hours later. They were straight back on a plane, flew home to Sydney, but the Queensland team, by the generosity of Senator Ron McAuliffe and Ross Livermore and the QRL, got a chance to go to Las Vegas and had an absolute ball over there, and we got the chance to go home. So you know, we've always appreciated what the QRL have done for us. They believe it's just been an opportunity for them to repay what we've provided for them and the Queensland Rugby League fans.
Back for Roach. Roach loses the ball, it's still loose. Picked up by O'Connor, he can't handle it. Who's got the football? Tedeschi's got the football. And the referee says we'll have a scrum, and the crowd are not happy. And there's a bit of a stink going on in the back play. They come in, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, getting sin bin at Lang Park wasn't something that I expected at the time. It came after Greg Canescu got the living daylights belted out of him. He had a couple of the New South Wales players set to him. Phil Daly was one of the players that was on top of him, and I think there was one or two other players that made life uncomfortable for him at that stage. I ran in from about 20 metres away to try and give him some sort of assistance. Turtle wasn't doing all that well for himself. He had the ball in one hand and was trying to fend off the punches coming at him. Obviously, all of the players got involved in the brawl. There was two touch judges came in to explain the incident. The Queensland touch judge was 15 metres away from the incident. The New South Wales touch judge came right from the other side of the field. The referee, Mick Stone, had the incident explained to them. The Queensland Rugby League touch judge said, I saw what happened, these players hit Canescu, this is what happened, and the New South Wales touch judge said, oh no, I saw what happened, Canescu started it and he started punching him, and then Lewis ran all the way in and started punching him. He said he actually instigated a further brawl, and I looked at him and he said, oh, yeah. And the New South Wales touch judge said, oh, yes, but this bloke started it. And I kept saying, and you can see it on the replay of the incident, I just kept saying, but he had the ball. But he had the ball. And he said, no. Canescu kept doing this. And I kept saying, no, hang on a minute, but he had the ball. And I'm thinking, how the hell could he get up and he punched him and then he did this when he had the ball in one hand and Phil Daly was belting the life out of him? And he said, OK, well, he said to Greg Canescu, you've got time in the sin bin and send him off. And then he turned around to me and he said, well, you ran in from 20 metres away to start another brawl and be involved. And I looked around and I said to Mick something like, oh, Mick, you're kidding, fair dinkum. And I said, you're going to believe this bullshit. Oh, Mick, turn it up. And I just wobbled my head and I said, you're kidding. And I looked at the bloke and I said something else as I went past him, which I can't repeat on the way off. And I walked off, and that's when, of course, all the cans started raining on the field. And I got a hammering by a couple of New South Wales newspaper journos the next day, which said that I actually instigated the riot. And one bloke said that I invited the crowd to throw the cans on the field, and I ended up going on I think it was the Channel 10 news the following evening, when I think it was Steve Liebman was working for Channel 10 then, and I think he said to me something like, oh, Wally, so you invited the crowd to throw cans on the field? And I think I said something like, no, I was getting sent off, and whoever was on with him said, but oh yes, but you did this, and I said, oh yes, I said, as a matter of fact, I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I invited them to throw cans on the field. What I did was I got sent off, and I said I actually ran around. I got sin binned, and I actually ran around. I went into the dressing room, and I got a big piece of paper and a felt pen, and I ran around to the crowd and held up a sign, please throw cans onto the field now. I said, you're right, that's what I did. I said, you're quite correct there. And she said, oh, now you're being silly. Or something like that, and I thought, I'm being silly. I thought, oh, turn it up. I invited the crowd to throw cans on the field. I said, yeah, that's exactly right. I said there was a can ball after we got two blokes thrown into the sin bin when Greg Canescu got the living daylights belted at him. I said, yeah, you're pretty right about that. But I think it was pretty obvious what had happened. I thought we'd sort of struggle about it, but anyway, I'd spoken to the ref about it a couple of times after, and Mick and I have had some giggles about it, and I think he's sort of agreed since the incident that there may have been one story from one touch judge that was slightly exaggerated, and Mick's always agreed on that point.
Yeah, there's been a lot of injuries in this great game. It's been played at an amazing pace, but here's Wally Lewis with a stolen ball now. Lewis makes his way upfield. He's got some pace. Lewis, can he go all the way? Still going. He does so. Wally Lewis has gone in, and look at this. Wow. We've said it before. This fellow is so incredibly strong. He doesn't look like he has the pace, but boy, oh boy, he just powered his way through the line there.
We were basically in a bit of strife in that game. There was nothing that went our way in that game. We'd lost a number of players during the first half. We lost Alan Langer with a broken leg. Mal, I think, broke his cheekbone. Fatty dislocated his elbow. Michael Hancock later dislocated his shoulder. Bobby Linder also broke his leg. You know, Queensland, I think we finished the game with 11, I think, on the paddock. But it was one of those games that Queensland actually deserved, you know, the famous Queenslander spirit tag that was that it's always been afforded to them. But you know, I got a lot of the rap for that try, but it came about through a famous Trevor Gilmeister hit on Bradley Clyde. They were bringing the ball away from their own line, New South Wales, and we'd been calling for the defence to lift. Gilly went forward and hit Bradley Clyde, who was one of the best runners in New South Wales, and the ball came free. Michael Hagan picked it up and just, you know, sheer instinct, Mick threw the ball wide. I got it, and I think, you know, I was straight against Chris Mortimer. I decided to try and run a little bit wide, and when I watch it now, I don't know why, but I'm dummying passes inside and outside, and there's no one around me. I don't know who the hell I'm dummying at, and I just decided to run on the outside, and I just had a look at the New South Wales players, and they were sticking man-on-man defence. I think I had Laurie Daly on the outside, and he wasn't going to leave his man alone. In the end, he had to virtually dive and try and make some effort to try and stop me, but I got into open spaces, and I looked up and there was only one bloke in front of me. It was Gary Jack, and you know, I looked forward, and I knew that Jimmy was in a bit of trouble, because I'd virtually I knew I had him at that stage, because Gary had a broken arm, and I decided to run to his left hand side, because he'd had some trouble with it, and I'd previously had some difficulty with a broken arm on a couple of occasions. So I decided to take him on that side, and I thought that I was going to get there. I thought that if he was going to show some strength, it would have been on the other side. So I got him on that side, and you know, I got there. It was, you know, just a moment that I think if I was asked to do it again, I could never get there, basically because I couldn't run that far ever again. But it was a very lucky moment. Fortune, you know, smiled on the brave, basically because of what Trevor Gilmeister did, and you know, the opportunity that was provided for me from Michael Hagan. His sight and instinct just naturally threw the ball wide to give me a chance. But you know, from there, Queensland thankfully held on. But I've got to say, from that moment, I can remember Queensland holding on, but that I regard as the proudest moment of my life, and not because of that try, but when we walked off, I stopped the Queensland team. I said, "You've got to stop and have a look at this." I said, "We're getting a standing ovation." I said, "You will never, ever get a standing ovation in Sydney again. The Queensland team will never, ever get a standing ovation in Sydney again." I said, "Lap this up." I said, "Never ever forget it, guys." I said, "Because you're never ever going to get this again." And the players all looked around, and I still remember it, and the New South Wales, the public, were all standing up, clapping Queensland off the field, because we did finish the game with virtually 11 blokes on the field. And I regard that as one of the proudest moments of my life, for what the New South Wales public afforded to the Queensland team.